Today we're going to examine the future of Overhaul after he became one of the few characters in My Hero Academia to get Skywalkered. 2 times I might add. Using information from the latest Ultra Analysis book, I'm going to explain whether he'll ever be able to use his quirk again, and then lay out the 4 most likely scenarios for the future of this character. But before we begin, make sure you subscribe as I think we have a small chance of hitting 30,000 by the end of January. Okay, so, for those that missed it, both of Overhaul's arms were destroyed by the League of Villains in the latest episode, with Mr Compress getting revenge for what happened to him earlier on in the season. And because Overhaul's quirk only works when he touches things with his bare hands, he is now officially quirkless. Now after this incident occurred, Overhaul was taken to Tartarus, which is the same prison where All For One and Stain are both being held. Basically, you're only allowed to go to this prison if you've been whooped by one of the main cast. Now, whilst it's incredibly ironic that the man who sought to destroy quirks is now quirkless himself, there's information from the Ultra Analysis book that implies that this might not be the end of Monsterhaul. His profile in the book says that he's been medically treated, but more importantly, that his quirk has been remodeled. Now, obviously to remodel something, that means you're fundamentally changing it, so it's unlikely that it would be close to his full powers, at least not anytime soon. In all likelihood, the remodeling of a quirk like Overhaul's probably means that he's able to reassemble things but potentially not disassemble things. And unlike Mr Compress, Overhaul would have gotten a good standard of care because his quirk was remodeled whilst he was in custody, so presumably he was receiving some kind of government healthcare, as opposed to being fixed up in a dark alleyway, which is most likely what happened to Mr Compress. But anyway, even with Overhaul's quirk partially restored, with the potential of it being fully restored one day, there's still the fact that he's locked up in Tartarus. This prison is located so far away from civilization, and as All For One said, inmates have their brainwaves monitored, and if they think about activating their quirks, then they might potentially even be shot. So even if Chisaki does get back to near full power, he will definitely not be using his quirk anytime soon if he knows what's good for him. But that's everything we know regarding his quirk so far. It's not really been touched on in the manga, so this text from the Ultra Analysis book is basically everything we have to go off from right now. Now moving on, I see 4 realistic paths for the future of this character, and minor spoiler warning ahead for the manga, so if you don't want to know anything at all, then this is the end of the video for you, my friend. Let's get into the 4 most realistic paths for the future of this character. So firstly, Overhaul's extensive knowledge of the quirk destroying bullets may actually work in his favour here. We know for a fact that the League of Villains wants to use them, as they went through all the trouble of hijacking a police vehicle and even killing a pro hero just to get a few of them. And in the manga we've seen that Shigaraki has actively tried to replicate these bullets with no success. So my theory is this. Now that Shigaraki has incredible power at his disposal, at some point in the near future, he's most likely going to attempt a prison break to get All For One out of Tartarus. And whilst he's doing that, we obviously know that Chisaki is being kept there, so it's a possibility that Overhaul could leverage his knowledge of these quirk destroying bullets in exchange for Shigaraki giving him one of the quirk restoring bullets. Overhaul's a guy who values his quirk so much, so I'm pretty sure he would do anything to get it back. And Shigaraki's a guy who desperately wants to recreate these bullets, but has no means of doing so. Overhaul could tell them that he knows the secret of how to create more and that he'll do it if they restore his quirk. And hell, even if they couldn't restore his quirk, they still have All For One on their team, like he could just give Overhaul a brand new quirk that's even better. Now there is bad blood between Overhaul and the League of Villains after they, destroyed his arms. But even with that being the case, I mean he would still want his full quirk back, because we know it's been remodeled, but that means it's basically not the same as it used to be. Although just thinking about it now, I'm not sure if the quirk restoring bullets were finished, but whether they are or not, Shigaraki has the resources on his side to be able to capture Eri and start making more of these quirk restoring bullets and quirk destroying bullets. However, I doubt this guy would let it happen. Anyway, the next most realistic path for Overhaul is a lot darker. So if the villains do break into Tartarus and start freeing their allies, then All For One would be top of the list, but number 2 on that list would be Kurogiri. Now Kurogiri has one of the best quirks in the anime, as he can teleport someone to a predetermined location. What if they were to set Kurogiri free and then use him to teleport villains in Tartarus to a predetermined location where they could harvest their quirks? Overhaul's quirk factor still exists, so they could still harvest his original disassembling and reassembling quirk if they wanted to. All they would have to do is get Kurogiri to send Overhaul to Dr. Ujiko, and within a few minutes I'm sure you could get a brand new Nomu who could disassemble and reassemble matter. And if nothing else, I'm sure All For One would love to take his quirk if given the chance. So yeah, it's possible that things might get even worse for Chisaki. The third possibility is probably the most unlikely, but it is possible that Overhaul might actually work with the police and heroes to take down the League of Villains. If we just take a step back, Shigaraki gave this guy a fate that he probably considers to be worse than death. In retaliation, I mean, it's not crazy to say that he'd cooperate with police or whoever else to try and take down the League of Villains. Or, on the other side, he could be used to help the heroes in a different way. We know that Eri's rewind quirk has unbelievable potential, and no one has studied it more than Overhaul. And as we've seen, she has no idea how to control it. So potentially in the future, it is possible that maybe Aizawa or Mirio visits Overhaul in prison at some point to discuss Eri's quirk and how she can use it properly. We saw in a recent chapter in the manga that Eri's quirk was getting a bit uncontrollable again, maybe because she hadn't used it for a long time. So whatever the reason for this is, it's clear that if she doesn't use it for a certain amount of time, it will start to cause her discomfort or even pain. So it's possible that Chisaki could be used in the future in this way. But I know what you're thinking. Why would he help Eri in any way? I'm not speaking from experience when I say this, as I haven't been locked up in jail, but maybe if he's had time to think about his crimes, he might have realized that it wasn't worth torturing a little girl just so that his gang of cosplayers could come out of the shadows. Look at you now, mate. Like, was it worth it? No. So it's possible that he might be a bit repentant, but in all likelihood, probably not. But that, my friends, brings us to the final possibility for the future of Overhaul, and a lot of people will almost definitely agree that this is the most likely scenario to happen. In fourth place, we have the idea that Overhaul is never seen and never heard from again. In many ways, Overhaul was a plot device in the story to show us why Shigaraki will be the true villain of My Hero Academia. They both wanted to replace All For One as the king of the underworld, and their quirks aren't that dissimilar, at least the destruction aspect of it. But ultimately, in the end, Overhaul was the one who failed, and Shigaraki just swept in and took away his life's work. With that being the case, Chisaki's relevance to the remainder of the story is probably going to be limited to two things. Number one is his impact on Eri, and number two is the quirk destroying and quirk restoring bullets that he created. Although, as I said, I don't think the quirk restoring bullets are completely finished. These are the things that Overhaul has either created or affected in very serious ways, and so from that point of view, maybe Overhaul's just served his purpose in the story, and now his legacy lives on through Eri and the bullets. For me personally, I loved Overhaul as a villain. A few of you already know this, but the Overhaul arc was actually my favorite arc in My Hero Academia. It gave us some amazing moments, including when Overhaul got jumped by a 6-year-old girl and a kid in his first year of high school. Good times, good times. But yeah, that's going to do it for me today, guys. We went through the possibility of Overhaul getting his quirk back, and also went through the four most likely scenarios for the future of this character. And I'm actually not sure which one is the most likely, because I know a Prison Break arc will almost definitely happen in the future, but whether Overhaul is relevant to that, I mean, it's purely up to Horikoshi. Thanks for watching, and peace out.